Thanks a lot. Matthew Lee, Inner City Press. Thanks a lot for the briefing. I wanted to, in looking how the report was broken down, I saw you had like work and then you had poverty. So I wanted to know whether you look at like issues of like lending to women, i.e. either for very small businesses or for housing, and whether you would consider, under which rubric that would find, and what, I mean, in the U.S. they have something called the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act that looks at like denial rates by gender, but just around the world, how you think statistics could look at that. And then on the issue of sexual violence, I saw in both the press release and I heard you say that you know, up to 60% of victims don't report. And although this might seem, this is obviously would not explain that number, I wanted to ask you about, just if you could, the UN's own, the way it deals with issues of sexual abuse. This is a pretty high-profile issue in the peacekeeping world. It seems like there hasn't really been accountability, although there's a lot of talk of zero tolerance. There hasn't actually been recompense either to victims or even seeming, you know, bringing to justice of perpetrators. And so I guess to tie in, the, you know, this very specific thing, can the UN do better on that so that people are more likely to actually report what happens to them? So it's two separate questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Matthew. Let me straightforward address to share the concern you have, because it is definitely a situation that the United Nations have acknowledged and have recognized as an area of distinctive work for everybody that works in the ground. Let me clarify, this is an issue that concerns not only peacekeeping operations. This is a must in every single office on the ground. Staff are trained, are aware, are clear about what sexual harassment and about what sexual violence is and why this is not in line with the values and principles of the United Nations. I myself was United Nations resident coordinator, and it was my responsibility to ensure that every single staff from every single agency, fund, or program would be in line with the values and principles of the UN with regards to this specific issue. As you have said, there are still cases and there are still situations, and we have seen the strong commitment from the leadership of the organization in different occasions coming here and addressing this situation. It will be difficult for me right now to address what is being done right now in the peacekeeping area, but we have seen that this issue have been covered in similar press conferences, and the responsible senior officials have been able to share with you these comments. But let me emphasize the key idea here. The key idea is that institutionally, the United Nations does systematically, not today, because yesterday there was some case somewhere in the world, but for several years already, have conducted systematically the issue of ensuring that all staff are aware and know how to deal with this subject.
There was a question on inheritance rights or property rights that's covered in the chapter on poverty. We are providing the latest statistics. Those are actually compiled by the World Bank. So we, of course, give credit to our colleagues from the World Bank. And they are quite shocking because I think we have data for 120 developing countries. And maybe in a third of countries we have law discriminating against women in terms of inheritance rights. There is another 50% of countries with customary laws discriminating against women. So at the end, we only have maybe 20% of countries where women and men have the same inheritance rights.
Thank you.